for tuning in to the T-Spot Daily. This is Jessica Manning, and I'm here with Kayden Coleman from Pennsylvania, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing an interview about Kayden's perspectives on different issues with the trans community, Kayden's perspective on his experiences as a trans man and as a LGBT member of the trans community. So, give me a little information about yourself, Kayden. Where are you from? How old are you? That sort of thing.
Well, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida,
Mhm.
and I currently live in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. I'm 29.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I can't think of it. I identify as a transgender man,
Mm-hmm.
so he, him pronouns. They and them is fine too. Um, I am married,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a 2-year-old daughter.
Okay. So how exactly does that work with you as, a trans man? How would you say the experience is different for you as a trans male father versus a cisgendered father?
I think there's a difference in I guess the connection.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I carried her and birthed her,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different type of. It's like an odd mixture of like a maternal and paternal type of deal for me. I know, like for example, when she was like a newborn,
Mm-hmm.
I could feel her crying like in my bone marrow. It was like the oddest thing. Like it set me into a different space. Whereas my husband didn't have that same experience. So things like that. There's just more of a, again, like that maternal instinct is kind of kicks in for me. Where I, as a cisgender father, probably doesn't get that too often, if at all.
Okay. And when exactly did you first realize that you were trans? When did you first, have that thought or that feeling or just that, overall experience of realizing that you were different from your peers?
Well, I've always been different. I didn't know that I was trans. I struggled a lot as a kid. I remember very vividly, especially in like middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I went through all these phases because I just didn't feel comfortable. I was gothic. I was a lot of things, and I didn't realize that I was trans until it was probably like 2005, 6, 2006, 7 is actually what it was, and I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't necessarily know that I was trans. I just knew that I wanted a binder. I needed something to, bind my chest. And I remember looking up testosterone and like trying to figure out how I could get testosterone. But at that time, the resources online were definitely not as plentiful as they are now. So every time I looked, it was like all I would see was like gray market testosterone, so I was kind of like put off by that. But that is the first time I vividly remember thinking that I wanted to transition, but I just didn't know that that's what the word for it was.
Okay. So when exactly, around what age do you think it was that you actually started to physically transition, medically and everything? Was that before or after you met your husband?
Definitely before.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I started physically, medically transitioning in 2000. It was either 2010 or 2011. It's that whole time was like a blur for me. And I didn't meet him until 2012.
Okay. And do you think that being, a LGBT trans person, how does that exactly affect, your day-to-day life, the way people view your relationship? Have y'all had any discrimination or anything like that?
Oh, of course, of course. Especially ever since the story went viral or whatever. There's always those people. Never to our face, not ever in person, but always like online. I mean, we've gotten death threats. We've gotten told that we're like disgusting abominations and all that stuff. Um, we're as such that we don't care. Like that type of stuff doesn't phase us at all. As far as like everyone else, it took a while. I remember when I first came out as a same gender loving trans man, I got a lot of pushback, especially from within the trans community, from other trans men. I got a lot of pushback for that. It took a while for me to be accepted. I think at that time you saw more trans men, more white trans men that were open about their sexuality and openly dating men, but trans men of color were not so open about it. So to have people like myself who were open about it, it was kind of foreign. And then when I got with Elijah, I got like the really crazy questions like, so technically this is a heterosexual relationship and things of that nature. But that's kind of died down. I think people are getting more of a idea of, kind of realizing how different gender and sexuality are. So we're getting less and less of it.
Now, as a trans man of color, and do you think that would you feel as though you and Elijah have had any backlash from the African American community? Because I know there's a lot of bias as far as towards LGBT people in the African American community, and it's something that's finally being addressed.
I think we've gotten a lot of the backlash that we've received have been from cisgender gay men, black or of color. I won't say just black, and lesbians. I guess like our relationship is very foreign to them, and I think a lot of the way that those communities, and I'm not saying everyone within them, just the ones that we receive backlash from. They're very set on genitals and what genitals are doing in relationships, rather than people and what people are doing in relationships. So, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of like the backlash we've got. It hasn't been. I mean, honestly, it's been the same from every race. We've gotten backlash just because of what they think we should be doing and how we identify ourselves, because they try to say that I'm not a gay man and that he's not a gay man because he's with me. So it's, your face says it all.
How exactly does that work in like parenting circles and stuff? And if you go to a PTSA meeting or something like that.
Well, we're not in very many parenting circles. We kind of avoid them because, one, we're two gay men. And there aren't very many people, believe it or not, in the queer community that are, that we can relate to, that are also parents. But like when we go to like our daughter's school and stuff like that, when the story went viral, actually the people that work at her school were very like supportive and very, very welcoming, and I got zero issues from them. The other parents either don't know or act like they don't know. So we haven't had any types of issues with other parents or staff or anything like that.
So, you haven't really had any experiences as far as from parenting circles and stuff like that, because you said you stay out of them normally. Um, but have you had any like friends who have kids that you like to hang out with and have family time with?
Um, to be honest, no. Uh, well, it's kind of like most parents will tell you
Mm-hmm.
um, when you have a kid, uh, people don't tend to like stick around in that sense. We're in our late 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of our friends don't have kids. Like the friends that they may want kids, but they just don't have kids now.
Mm-hmm.
So the only people that we know that have kids are either too far away or just other family members of ours.
Okay. But you do have the support from your family members, though, right?
Yeah, we have my family, my father and my stepmother specifically have been like a huge help for us. They've been like, we need a little break. They live in Maryland, which is not far from us at all. They'll take her for a few weeks at a time, so we can have like a breather, because it is definitely a 24/7 job. Um, and Elijah's parents, they live in New Jersey, and they have their hands full with their other grandkids. But when they can help, they do. Um, so they've been pretty supportive. I mean, it was kind of like a bumpy road at first, but it's definitely gotten a lot better.
And you said she's two, right?
She's two, yes.
Are you experiencing the terrible twos? Is it true what they say?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why I'm like tired right now as we speak. I'm sitting here like, ooh.
Well, with the terrible twos, what is the memory that you have of with you and Elijah and your daughter, that really stands out to you and really makes everything worth?
Um, one memory. Let me think. Um, I don't know. Every time I think of a memory, I think of when it actually has to do when she turned one. When she turned one, we did her first cake smash right here in the living room, because I do photography. So we didn't give her a cake. We just got some cupcakes.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of let her go crazy. And I was snapping pictures, and towards the end of it, Elijah got down with her
Mm-hmm.
and started like going at the cupcakes, and it was just like this priceless moment that I got on camera. That's actually like my Facebook cover photo right now,
Mm-hmm.
that I probably will never change. It was just like she was just so excited, and it's like moments like that when something new's happening and you can see it, and they get so excited and their whole face lights up, and you have to remember that like things that we see on a regular basis that we take for granted, they're just getting to experience it, and that makes it so much better.
Mm-hmm. Those moments are always great, especially the first birthday with the smash cake. Those
Yeah,
are always great photo ops.
absolutely.
What about one thing that Elijah does or has done to kind of show that he stands by you? It could be something relationship, life wise, it could be transition wise, just anything.
Well, oh, there's been plenty of things. For top surgery, it was just me and him. We drove from Philadelphia to Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it was like in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got there at like 4 or something. And as soon as we got there, it was time for me to go into surgery. And he waited, and then like he had to drive the whole way home because I was like doped up. And I'm talking, he was changing my drains and doing all that stuff. And then after, same thing like pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
My pregnancy was kind of like odd. I had like high blood pressure and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it was painful for me to walk and everything like that. I mean, during that time, I didn't even have to give myself a bath. Like he did that for me. And then after she was born, I had um, what did I have? I had anxiety and I had postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And before I had her, I had this plan in my head. This is what was going to happen, that I was going to be a stay-at-home dad and my daughter was going to be homeschooled and all of that was happening. After she was born, I was like, I have to go back to work. You're going to have to quit work, and that's what's happening. And he did. I called him and I was like, listen, you can't go back to work, and he didn't. And I mean, it was like a seamless transition. I went back to work and he stayed at home and took care of this very, very loudly screaming baby. And then he would still like cook dinner and he would still make sure that things were together. And I mean, he's still doing those things to this day. He'll go to work and be at work all day, get the baby to daycare, come home, make dinner. It's like all the time. So those are things. And then also, nobody can talk badly about me without him defending me, which is like the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I know that's definitely something as far as support from your partner as a trans person that, the people who aren't in a relationship often envy is because we have that support and that person standing up for us.
Right.
So
It's definitely like there's not a price that you can put on it. It's really nice to have somebody that gets it. And even if they don't get it, they're not going to let anybody else try you, for lack of better words.
mm-hmm. So during your transition, what parts would you consider milestones during your transition? And during those milestones, what emotions did you experience? Whether it was your first shot, your first, whenever you got your top surgery, anything.
My first shot was definitely a milestone because it was very difficult for me to get my testosterone. I was dealing with this place in Atlanta, Georgia, that we suspect had, even though they provided those services, they had kind of like a issue with doing so. It was really a women's like abortion clinic or something to that effect, and they gave me a lot of pushback. I think it lasted almost a year before I could actually get my testosterone. I ended up having to go somewhere else to do it. So when I got that, it was like a relief. And then my top surgery, that was something that I thought it just seemed like it was unattainable because of how expensive it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was lucky enough to land a job that offered benefits that I didn't even know offered the benefits. I just happened to have a friend who her wife worked in the LGBT HR department of that particular company, and she was like, "You do know you get this covered?" I was like, "Shut up!" And I called, and they were like, "Yeah, we cover that." And it was like, "Wow, this is something that's really attainable for me." That was like, for me, top surgery was like the ultimate milestone.
Since you said you had issues obtaining hormones, is that something that is common with people that you know? I know that it's something that's common, worldwide as far as trans people in general, but is it common in your area? Do you have friends in other areas?
Especially not here in Philly. Philly is very progressive when it comes to like trans people and things of that nature. We have the Mazzoni Center here, which is an LGBT clinic, and they provide transgender services. So a lot of people actually come from different areas specifically to obtain hormones and things of that nature. And these days, I don't hear so much people having issues. I think when I was trying to obtain hormones, there was a lot less knowledge on what was going on. I have thyroid issues, and that's why they wouldn't give it to me. and there's nothing that says that testosterone would affect my thyroid in any way, but they were just being like super cautious about it. But these days there's a lot more information, so there are a lot less guys that are having issues. Because I wasn't the only one back then. There were a lot of guys that had issues where like their doctors weren't trying to give them their hormones and things of that nature due to like other health issues that really had nothing to do. One had nothing to do with the other.
Mm-hmm. Where you said do you actually attend that LGBT clinic, or is that just one that you know of in the area?
Oh no, I actually go there, and my daughter goes there. Well, she did at first, but now she goes somewhere else. But
Were there any hurdles that you had to overcome, there that, or you didn't have to overcome there that you possibly would have other places, such as, counseling, cost, anything like that?
well, their costs are awesome. They have a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have insurance, and you're under a certain age. They have a sliding scale that's really really cheap. And then even beyond that, their services aren't nearly what other doctors' offices services are. Um, and then there's things that I appreciate from that clinic. If they I don't have to deal with like the misgendering or the awkward questions. My doctor is actually also a trans man, so it's easier to talk to him about certain things. Whereas when I have to go out elsewhere for certain services, I'm like, crap, okay, I'm gonna have to explain this and explain that, and maybe have to deal with being called miss and things of that nature. But I get a specialized type of care there, and um, it's the only place where I'm like guaranteed to have that type of service provided to me. Um, and trust me, like when I was pregnant, I had to go somewhere else, and it was not a pleasant experience. So it's definitely something that I appreciate.
That was actually my next question. How what with the OB, and natal experiences of a trans man, is something that you would like to say to doctors and providers and educators as to how this situation should be handled, how it was handled, even incorrectly sometimes when you were in that situation.
Um, well, I think it spans a lot farther than just doctors and nurses and things of that nature. It starts for me. I feel like it starts with insurance. When the insurance companies start acknowledging that it's not just females that can carry children, it would make it a lot easier. I ended up having to change my insurance from male to female in order to receive care. So therefore, whenever I went to the OB and prenatal care, when they would call me, it wasn't the same person calling me every time. So when they would call me, they would be calling me Miss, and then I'd go and sit there looking like this. And they'd be like, and then they'd be like, "You do know it says you're here for." I'm like, "I know what it says I'm here for. It's right." Um, and then for doctors and things of that nature, there needs to be a certain type of like sensitivity training so that nurses and things of that nature are aware of things that are appropriate to ask and things that are inappropriate to ask. Um, there shouldn't be a moment where I'm in here for, I don't know, a cough, and you're asking me who the biological father of my child is, and I'm telling you both of us, and you're saying, no, I know that, but who, like, those are questions that are not relevant to why I'm sitting here, so you're just asking just to be, that's inappropriate. Um, Also, we're not science experiments. I had that experience while I was actually in labor. My particular room was like student central. It was just like a parade. It was like every 5 seconds there was somebody, a new face, which is very very uncomfortable for someone in my position as a man giving birth. Um, it's already an experience. I'll just say that it's already an experience. I have a hard enough time trusting a gynecologist. I don't want 80 people surrounding me, and that actually really did put me in a very compromising position post having my child, because now not only do I have postpartum depression, but I have postpartum anxiety and PTSD because of it was just such a traumatic experience for me. So that's something that healthcare providers need to be very cognizant of. Like, this is something that if someone's comfortable enough, you probably should get their consent. You shouldn't just be like parading people into their room. And I mean, that goes. I feel like that should go for people, anyone, trans or not. You shouldn't just be parading people into your private lives. This is a health matter. It's not. It's not something for you to gawk at, for lack of better words. So definitely like a sensitivity training. I think that needs to be like a worldwide thing, for sure.
I definitely know how uncomfortable that can be. I've had that experience where, the doctor will ask, is it okay if I bring the student in? And it kind of, it's a nice thing to do almost because you feel as though you want to help educate someone. But at the same time, my experience obviously was nowhere near as personal as like an OB or, just finished giving birth. So that's a lot more personal. And a lot of times there's a lot more people that want to.
Yeah, there were times when there were 4 or 5 people standing around my bed, and they were just 3 out of the 4 were just standing there like observing, and I never got asked. They just walked in, and it got to the point where, and I mean, this is during the labor process, so I'm like dealing with just like a whole lot, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? And it got to the point where I was just, they give you that robe, I just took it off, and they were like, are you sure? I was like, well, everybody's going to come in here and see every part of me anyway, so might as well. It really got to be an annoyance and very inconveniencing and very uncomfortable. And then also they were trying to treat me like a woman, for lack of better words. And it got to the point where I had to demand a C-section because they were not trying to give it to me. And I was like, listen, I'm at the point of breakdown right now, and you guys are sitting here trying to force certain things on me, and I don't appreciate it. And I told them, I was like, something has to happen. And they finally listened to me, but it should have never gotten to that point. And I really would dislike it if any other trans guy had to go through that, because I'm still 2 years later trying to get back to my normal self.
Are there any words of encouragement or any, anything that you can say to kind of set some sort of expectation for other trans men who just found out they were pregnant or are planning on becoming pregnant soon?
Well, I would say that to do whatever is going to make you happy. I get contacted very often by guys who either want to get pregnant or just found out they were pregnant, and they're very worried about how society is going to view them. But the way I see it, I stopped worrying about society when I decided to transition. I'm going against everything that society says I was supposed to do to begin with, so I might as well keep going. And I feel like a lot of people should have that mentality because society is not worried about you, and you shouldn't be worried about society. If carrying your child is what you want to do, then do it. I've known some guys that have had. My experience is not the end all be all. I've known some guys who had awesome experiences, and there's a lot of groups that you would not know of that are on Facebook. That if you're thinking about conceiving or you've already conceived and you're pregnant and trying to figure it out, you can definitely contact me and I will get you in touch with that group. They were definitely my support system. Every time I was like, I didn't know how to handle certain things, or if I was going through certain things, I would post in there, and there's like a plethora of guys, and at least one of them have gone through what you think you're going through alone. So there's definitely like a support system, and it's invaluable.
Do you think, I know that a lot of people say that as a trans person, you are kind of just thrown into this agenda that you weren't socialized as to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there has been any parts in your life that have really stood out where you've stopped and thought, I really wish that I would have had some history of being a man to kind of reflect on, being a father, being a husband, stuff like that?
Um, there have been times. For me, I grew up with three older brothers,
Mm-hmm.
so um, I've had some very close examples, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times, however, like in social settings with, I don't know, a cisgender heterosexual man,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't really feel comfortable or know how to properly communicate, or pick up on certain mannerisms. I mean, I've definitely picked it up now, but definitely in the beginning, even for me, black barbershops are an experience in themselves. And um, honestly, I went to black barbershops prior to
Mm-hmm.
transitioning because I had short hair, but it was like a completely different experience.
Yeah.
The way you're treated when you're read as female and the way you're treated when you're read as male are two completely different experiences. And it was very anxiety filled for me because I hadn't been going to a barbershop as a man since a child. So there's certain conversations that if I was sitting there being read as a female, that they wouldn't be having. But now that I'm sitting there being read as a male, they're having these conversations, and they're very like gung ho on getting you involved in these conversations, and you're just sitting there like, I don't even know what to say. I don't know how to navigate this situation. So there's definitely been times, even in the workplace, the conversations that are had, they're just like, wow. So this is what has been going on that I wasn't prepared for. And then it's also a matter of figuring out your identity. I was having this conversation yesterday, as a matter of fact, where it's like, for me, I haven't lived my life as a gay man. I haven't lived my life knowing that I was a gay man. This is all like new for me. And so I'm still battling trying to figure out like my personal identity and where I fit in the gay community, which is very difficult as a transgender man. So there's a lot of spaces that I have yet to navigate that I would have loved to have some, experience on younger because I'm about to be 30 and now I'm still trying to figure this out. 30 is old in the gay world, so I'm like trying to catch up. So, those are definitely like things that kind of, like you said, you just kind of get thrown into and you're just like, what's going on? But it gets better and it gets easier. And I mean, even using the restroom, for example, a women's restroom, you walk in, you smile, you say hi. People are passing toilet paper under the stalls. In the men's room, you walk in, you do not make eye contact. You get in, you get out, look at the floor, don't ask for toilet paper. If you don't have toilet paper, tough. Like that's kind of how it works in the men's restroom, and that takes getting used to. And it's little things like that you don't even really consider until you're in in that predicament. So it's definitely been like an experience.
I know that you have your campaign that you started called Loving My Trans Body, a body positivity message for trans people.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly did pregnancy affect your, self-image or?
Pregnancy did not affect my self-image. It didn't make me feel any less of a man. It didn't make me feel odd. I had no problem. I really did. I thought I would be like super dysphoric. I thought that I would have issues and have a problem with how I looked in the mirror and things like of that nature. And I think that maybe because I got top surgery before, it was easier for me. But being pregnant didn't, but after pregnancy did, because I remember like after being pregnant and I started like going out and socializing again. I socialized with gay men, and gay men, their mouths are kind of, not all of them, but their mouths are kind of reckless. And I would get, damn, Kate, you still look pregnant, and I was like, oh crap. And losing this belly has been like a very hard thing for me. And I told myself, I decided, I was like, I'm not going to let the standards of society make me not love my body. obviously I can't be out in the world like, yeah, well, my stomach's like this because I had a baby, because people are looking like I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think about like how I felt towards my body before surgery and before testosterone. And we're kind of taught that because we're transgender, that we're supposed to dislike our bodies. We're supposed to dislike the things that are supposed to be foreign to us, aka our chest, aka our voices, our height, things of that nature. And we try to find ways. If you go on YouTube, you can find ways to hide those things and deepen those things, or lighten those things, or make yourself look masculine, or make yourself look more feminine. And it's like, who decided that we have to hate ourselves? Who decided that we had to look in the mirror and not like who was looking back at us just because we identify as trans? Of course, there are things that we may want to alter, but that doesn't mean we have to hate our bodies. So that's where I came up with the Loving My Trans Body campaign, because it's like, embrace yourself and learn self-love first, and everything else will fall into place. And also I want to change the mainstream idea of what a trans man is supposed to look like, or what a trans woman is supposed to look like. We're not all buff and sexy and ripped abs and bodybuilders, and I mean, it's nice that they're there. They're nice to look at, but there are some fluffy ones like myself. There are some effeminate ones like myself. Some of us want to wear makeup. Some of us don't ever want to take testosterone. Some of us will never get surgery, not because we don't want to, maybe because of health reasons. But that doesn't make them any less trans, and it doesn't mean that they should love themselves any less. And there should be more representation of us in the media, so that we can be accepted as well. I've been like berated on my YouTube because I'm, on the heavier side, or because I'm effeminate, or because I don't wear makeup. And they're like, well, you're supposed to be a man. Why would you do this if you're supposed to be a man? And I know it's because the images that they have in their head, what they have like Buck Angel, Leith, who I love, by the way. Hi, Leith. But like, these are the images that they have, and they have nothing else to go off of.
So, what would be one moment that you would say really inspired you to start this campaign?
One moment.
It could be more than one.
Well, I guess it would be just one day I was looking in the mirror, and I literally took a picture of myself, and then I took that picture of myself on my cell phone, and I started drawing circles around the things that I wanted to change. And it was kind of depressing. No, it was very depressing. It wasn't kind of depressing. It was very depressing, because it was like, why do I need to change all of these things? Do I want to change them for myself, or is it because I'm trying to fit into this mold of what I'm supposed to look like? And I decided at that moment that while I'm still going to strive to be healthier and strive to lose weight and things of that nature, I'm going to do it for myself, and because I want to be around for my kid, rather than to try to fit into a mold. And that was kind of like my aha moment. And then another moment was a friend of mine. She began transitioning from male to female, and she would not announce her transition until she felt like she looked presentable enough. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, no, because I need to make sure that, my facial hair is removed and things of that nature. And I'm like, why? Who told you that? Well, because I need to make sure that I'm up to these standards. And I'm like, who made these standards, and why? Those were like my turning moments, where I was like, that. It made me sad. I was like, you really are going to just like live in the shadows until you feel like you're good enough, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get that, because that was somewhat in the way that I transitioned. I was on hormones for, God, at least 3 years before I actually started presenting. So,
Right.
I mean, I kind of get that, but mine was for completely different reasons. Mine, weren't really about the way that I looked or wanting to make sure that I was ready to present. Mine was just more or less social pressures and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother issue in
Mhm.
itself. But when it comes to image and really just embracing yourself, it shouldn't be based off of anyone else's standards but your own. And I think that if that were pushed more into the community, there would be a lot more acceptance and happiness and people willing to be visible and live out loud and proud.
Mhm. So, how do you think that the lack of visibility for trans men of color, I know that you mentioned that earlier, is especially when you're scrolling through, Instagram or anything like that, you see a ton of white trans men,
Mm-hmm.
or you see a lot of really buff trans men. How do you think that really affects the self image or even the self worth of other trans men?
Well, I think it affects them greatly because it just makes me remember like when I first started transitioning. When you first start transitioning and you don't really know what's out there, you start looking for examples.
Mm-hmm.
And you Google FTM, and what pops up? You have your Sean Stinsons and your Teak Milans and your and Lath and Aiden and all those people, and you're like, oh, I have to look like that. But we learned in biology that everybody's not. I don't. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much you work out, you'll never look like that. So some of these goals are unattainable. You know what I mean? And trying to even get to those goals is in and of itself just an added pressure on top of passing and worrying about paying for surgery and worrying about your family disowning you and things of that nature. It They're not wrong for looking the way they look, obviously. It's just the lack of diversity in who we're showing, and I get it, sex sells, I get that, but what are we selling? I can't. I don't get that. We're not selling anything. We can be represented in a diverse manner and still get our point across. It doesn't have to be, hey, look at this sexy trans heteronormative man. Look how straight and heterosexual and buff he looks. It doesn't have to always be that. And it makes people will contact me and they'll be like, I'm thinking about transitioning, but I'm worried that I'm not going to pass and things of that nature. And I'm like, or I'm worried I'm not muscular enough, or I'm worried I'm not tall enough, or I'm worried I'm not masculine enough. And I'm like, why do you think that? And they're like, well, I see X, Y, Z, and X, Y, Z. And I'm like, what does that have to do with you? Like, who do you want to be?
Do you feel as though, the fact that these people are asking that question, do you feel as though seeing these images of, this completely different kind of trans person almost makes them devalue their own masculinity or their own identity?
Absolutely does. There's a pressure. There's a pressure to be that, and unfortunately, oftentimes it comes from within the trans community. Obviously, I can't speak on trans women. I never want to be that person that's like, yeah, I'm speaking for trans women too. I can only speak on trans men, and I know that like I said, for me, like when I came out and I wasn't, your stereotypical masculine guy, I got a lot of flack. Like they were telling me from within the community, I was being told that I shouldn't transition. I might as well stay a girl. If you're going to date men, you might as well stay a girl. If you're going to be feminine, you might as well stay a girl. This is what I was being told, and there's a lot of that pressure. And there's all these fitness groups, and the amount of muscle that you're gaining, like measures how manly you are and how attractive you are, and they're just kind of like pushing the fluffy guys and the short guys and the effeminate guys out to the side, and it's damaging to the community as a whole. That could be compared to a trans woman who passes every day in society and a trans woman who might not. We should be showing both sides of the coin so that people can see that there's different dynamics to the community rather than just this one constant face of masculinity and fit and this is what we have to be. It's very, very damaging.
Do you feel as though, I mean, even as a somewhat feminine trans man, you sway a little bit more on the feminine side.
Mhm.
Do you feel as though I don't know, I lost it. Do you feel as though you have any sort of do you feel as though there's any way that you have any sort of passing privilege that other people don't have? Because even as a very feminine trans man, you obviously look very male. And a lot of people aren't really that lucky to look very male, or they haven't had the chance, or the money, or the resources, or the time to have top surgery. Passing privilege is, of course, one of like a huge topic in the trans community. Do you
Yeah.
ever find yourself considering your own passing privilege?
I do, and then I don't. I'm very guilty of kind of like basking in that privilege. I like bathe in it sometimes because it's, it can be very affirming. Um, and when you're transitioning, when you have certain goals, what in regards to your transitioning, and you kind of you obtain those goals, it's easy to forget that somebody else is like struggling. Um, I don't. I never really had very many problems passing, even before transitioning medically. Um, I started passing pretty much as soon as I started presenting as male, which is, I guess a lucky thing for me, but that was my particular goal. I do think that I have that privilege. I know that I have that privilege. And I learned that, like, when I was actually working at a particular job, and a trans woman, it was a car rental place, and a trans woman brought a car back. And this guy starts, like, going in on the trans community. I'm just sitting there like, oh, really? Is that how you feel? And instead of, kind of like being like, hey, no, I'm trans as well, I kind of just like hid behind the fact that I could pass, really just trying to avoid conflict. But I realized that I could have used that moment, and I didn't. So I definitely have that privilege, and like I said, I bathe in it, and it's definitely something that I kind of wish didn't exist. Not kind of, I do wish it didn't exist. I wish that, people could just accept that if someone um, wants to present as male and be respected as a man, that it shouldn't be about their aesthetic. It should just be about a simple respect. I mean, frankly, if I wanted to be called a unicorn, you should just respect that and call me a unicorn. I don't understand why it's so difficult, but such is life.
I noticed that you did, address privilege a little bit in your body positivity under the trans umbrella line. I saw the I'm Not Kate shirt. That's actually one of my favorites. I love that one.
Yes. I was rooting for Kate. I was. When she first came out, I was like, hey, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more she spoke, the more I was like, no, Kate, no.
Exactly.
And so now, I'll tell you exactly what inspired that shirt. In February, I went to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in triage, and, they ask, have you ever had any surgeries?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm going to be truthful. So I'm like, yes, I had a double mastectomy. I recently had knee surgery, and I also had a C-section. And the lady looks up at me, and she says, you had a C? What? I was like, yes, I had a C-section. I'm transgender. She was like, oh. She goes, oh, you're Kate. No. You're reverse Kate. I was like, are you serious right now? Are you serious? No, I'm not Kate. And that's where that shirt came from. Because she's like the trans staple that we all want to go away.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have to go away. I just want her to shut up. Like, just don't speak at all.
Please.
Just don't speak at all. And I find it so funny that she is the staple when we have, like, the Laverne Cox and the Janet Mox.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at her MAC campaign that she has now. I mean, Janet or Laverne could have easily done that. easily, but they could not have a trans woman of color up there.
Of course not.
Especially not one who's not supporting, those certain political ideals and stuff like that she is definitely boosting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like if I was in triage and somebody said, "You're Laverne Cox." No, you're the reverse Laverne Cox. I probably would have been like, yeah, I am.
I mean, she's not Republican at least.
And that's all that matters.
She understands, I just like that episode where Kate was being told by people, being explained to her about her own white male privilege, and she completely just refused to see it.
Yeah.
She refused to see the privilege that, her her money has got her, her ethnicity, her gender throughout, her entire life up until now. And it's kind of odd to see, in my opinion, a trans woman who still holds on to so much of their male privilege.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that when your privilege is as such, where it gives you so much, it would be hard to get rid of. If I, when I identified as a lesbian woman, if I was being thrown millions of dollars and, being paid to go places and just being given a certain tier of respect simply because of who I was, and then I transitioned, I'm pretty sure I would still be trying to hold on to some of that because I wouldn't want all that to go away simply because I transitioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's going on with Miss Jenner. But she just needs to, at some point you have to know when to say when. And when the community that you think you're helping is blatantly telling you that you're not helping, it's time to take a back seat. But she's not going to because she's already been paid to keep talking.
Exactly. So with your body image campaign that you're doing with Loving My Trans Body, is there anybody that you would like to thank, or anybody who's necessarily helping you in this project or working alongside you?
Yes. So there is someone that I was partnering with, Amari Jace. He is a great guy. He has 3 kids, however, so he has his hands full. And though we definitely will probably most likely work together again in the future, he didn't necessarily have the time to dedicate, which is definitely understandable. I definitely still want to thank him. Also, right now I am kind of behind the scenes working with the owner of a app that's about to be coming out called Translation. His name is Jamel Young. So Translation is going to be an app that is, think of, like Plenty of Fish and OkCupid, but for trans people and their admirers. He's put a lot of work into it, and he's also like one of my models for my clothing line. And whenever I kind of stuck, I can definitely reach out to him, and vice versa. We kind of like pool our resources together. So definitely he's been helping and promoting as much as he can, and whenever he wears it, he tags it and things of that nature. And everyone else that really is like buying shirts and participating in the mentorship program and things of that nature. I can't think of. There's just a lot of names to name, but y'all know who you are. Thank you.
Is there something that the money for the shirts is going to that you want to kind of get detail about, as far as counseling or mentoring or just overall propaganda to kind of increased exposure?
The main idea behind the shirts was to just kind of get that image out there. I'm trans and I love my body. I am, however, working on trying to put together starter kits for trans men and trans women.
Hmm.
It's a lot harder than it sounds, um, but I'm trying to figure out a way to orchestrate, for people who are just starting to transition, um, the essentials, like things that every trans man should have, you know, to get them, where they need to be. Because I mean, especially, in today's economy, it's not easy to, when all you have is female things to go just, to switch over and know what to buy and know what you need and things of that nature. Um, so I'm trying to take a portion of what's coming from the t-shirts and put it into that. That's going to be down the road though, because we're still trying to figure out the right things to put in there, put in the kids.
That is a really awesome project. I love that. That is really great. I mean, especially, trans men and binders, whenever you first start transitioning,
That's the hardest thing to get.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to be in there. We're just figuring out the rest.
Now, as far as current issues going on in the world, there's obviously based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we just had that bill passed in North Carolina, the House Bill 2. Is there any particular issue that's going on currently nationwide or worldwide that you want to touch on? That really kind of, hits you?
They all hit me. That North Carolina thing, I tried so hard to just not speak on it. And if you follow me on Facebook, then you know I couldn't help myself and I spoke on it. Um, um, it's definitely something that, like, I sit back and I wonder, what can we do to fix things? And you know that there are some people who aren't going to change their mind. Another thing that hits home with me is just all the murders and the suicides that are going on in the trans community. It seems like every other week, every other week, there's someone new, and it's very saddening how the rate at which these things are happening, all these senseless deaths, and people killing themselves just because society wants to be shitheads, for lack of words, and not respect a person for who they are, to the point where they want to take their own life. That's something that definitely affects me. And another thing is just the lack of jobs and opportunities that are afforded to trans people. And that's why here in Philly, I run a workshop with there's a group called Equality PA. So I partner up with them, and I run a professionalism and resume workshop. It's not every month, but we've done 2 so far, and the turnout has been awesome. And basically, it's just like, resume tips and things that you might not have learned, because a lot of us, got kicked out of our homes before we got to get those skills that we need, or learn how to really put together a resume and learn how to dress to go to a job interview and things of that nature. So we touch on those things, and hopefully that's something that can be like, in different states and different major areas, and even hopefully in smaller areas where, we're teaching people, how to get and attain and keep jobs, and get out of, certain situations that they're in and things of that nature.
I noticed how you touched on the murders and things that are going on. How does it make you feel exactly with the fact that the media often scandalizes the murders of trans women, and a lot of times just completely omit, any sort of violence towards trans men? A lot of times trans men aren't even included in that discussion.
Well, I will say that it angers me, especially when you see that a trans woman has been murdered, and it's immediately they're siding with the person who took this person's life, and it's like, let's take away the title of trans woman, let's take away black, white, purple, green, let's take away color. We're talking human being to human being. A human being took another human being's life simply because they did not like the way that they were living their lives. And there's always that, well, the trans woman must have been tricking him. And it's like, why do you think that that's why we transition? We all transition just to trick you guys because that's what our life goal is, to trick cisgender people. That's not how it works. There needs to be a lot more. Um, there needs to be a change in thought process and a lot more accountability. Um, stop. I don't want to hear that there's no that these people are killing people and they're not being charged with hate crimes and things of that nature. Like, and we all know what it is, but there's laws that are put in place that are protecting these men and women or whatever that are killing them. And it's a human being taking another human being's life. It should have nothing to do with sexuality or gender identity or anything of that nature. And then, as far as trans men, yes, we are like the unicorns of the LGBT community. And when something does happen, where there's usually we don't know because there's the misgendering that happens in the media and by the families and things of that nature. And it's just really, really sad that you would think that you'd want to honor someone who has been murdered or who committed suicide or anything of that nature. But it's like, they're dead, so we might as well just go back to doing what we were doing anyway. And there's just zero accountability, like zero. And it's beyond that.
And also,
I don't think I'll ever understand it. And I really hope that changes.
Mm-hmm.
At some point before my daughter's an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that. I would love to see her grow up and see like an actual change where we're respected and not being picked off. Like, I would really love to see that happen.
And also, like a time where trans people are included in the discussion about domestic violence also, because a lot of times trans people, men, women, are just completely left out.
Yeah. We're left out of a lot of things. And that's why I decided to be so open about my pregnancy. And that's why I'm so gung-ho about talking about, bringing up things that people are not speaking on. Mm-hmm. We can talk about how sexy someone is, and we can talk about how beautiful a trans woman is. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that. Awesome. Mm-hmm. I enjoy a good-looking person just like the next person. But can we talk about how there are different identities within those identities? And can we talk about how people are homeless and we're not getting jobs, so we're left to do, sex work, or we're barely surviving, we're scratching, we're trying to like pull together whatever resources that we're not being given because we're trans. These are things that need to be addressed and talked about, and they're not being talked about, and that's other than by a select few, but the majority is not discussing this. And these are things that should be in my opinion, should be at the forefront, because these are the things that, if addressed, it's like a trickle-down effect, in my opinion. If we handle the big shit, then the little shit will fall into place in a nice world. But we need more people to speak out, and we need more visibility, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to talk about while I have you? Any, would you like to plug your page or campaign?
Yeah, shameless plug time. So my Facebook is Kayden Coleman. Mm-hmm. YouTube is, you can just search the Shady Colemans. You'll find Elijah and I's YouTube on there. Instagram is Kayden Coleman. We have two Instagrams, Kayden Coleman and the Coleman Fam. So there's just me, and then there's all of us. Mm-hmm. If you are interested, I actually have a shirt on. I'll show you it. It's I've been wearing it all day. So this is one of the tank tops. You can find that on www.underthetransunumbrella.org, not .com, .org. And also I have a website, www.kaydenxcoleman.com, and that talks about, it gives you more detail on the Loving My Trans Body campaign and the mentorship program that goes hand in hand with that, which is currently under construction, by the way. I'm trying to revamp it to make it a little bit more effective. It wasn't really that long ago. But I think that's it. I did YouTube. I didn't forget. I did Facebook. Yeah. Website for the shares I did. So yes, that's yes. Oh, there's a family Facebook too. See, the family Facebook is the Colemans.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the Colemans. Um, and we update on there pretty often. I mean, obviously we have a 2-year-old, so it's not as often as I'd like, but we definitely upload whenever anything exciting happens to us, which isn't that often these days. But we try to keep up with them as much as possible, and we interact with people. And yeah, I think that's it. I have a lot of social media accounts, but they're worth it.
Awesome.
I think.
I think they are. They all reach their individual, audiences.
Yeah.
Whether it's the trans men, trans men of color, trans gay men, or even just trans parenting in general, because there are a lot of, the trans parents who really need that support and need to be able to see their self represented somewhere else. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Absolutely. Also, I will be at the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference this year, and I will be vending there, and I will be at in Buffalo, New York in November for their trans event, and I will be speaking there.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing those. Hopefully, we'll get videos of those.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me today. It was really great speaking with you and getting your opinion and your perspective, and really learning a lot about you and your experiences, Kate.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And just to say thank you to all the viewers who are watching. I'm Jessica Manning, and this is Kayden Coleman, and we're on the T-Splat Daily.
Bye.